So helping depression. Okay. What I don't want anyone to get from this is that I am prescribing to you solutions. My depression is so much better than it was. But yesterday there was a pretty intense event. Last night I wasn't feeling good, and it's evident that I was down. I still have ups and downs.
It's weird. You woke up yesterday and we're just like, whoa.
So it's not like it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
I almost, though, would never say to somebody I'm depressed at this point. I know that I have flashbacks, right? And so maybe some of it is just a reframing of what I used to call depression as flashbacks. But I'm also at the point where, like, my whole life people ask me, hey, how you doing? And I'd be like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'll say good sometimes now. And it's not like I'm just trying to say good anyway. Mm-hmm. No, I'm like, no, I'm all right. I'm
genuinely
all right.
better.
I'm doing okay today. So what can I attribute that to? Well, I think the rediscovery of the Bible as an imagination land, better than a fantasy book, with greater lore and a deeper wisdom and a truer archetypology and an endless pool of corners that you didn't know were there or you forgot about. And then the original language is just kind of coming alive again for me with that, having that gift that I was given as a pastor. That's been a big part of it. But then around that, I had all these other things that in my natural life came into place as well. I discovered a diagnosis for what my traumatic pathology was. And I mean, God, that was really enlightening. I found a non-sugar-based diet, which then removed a certain up and down that the insulin roller coaster creates, right? So I stopped drinking. And I'll have a beer sometimes, have two sometimes, get a headache the next day after just two. It's kind of ridiculous, but that makes a difference in stuff. I learned to believe that we were being isolated and started fighting against it. I turned the screen off, stopped just pummeling myself. So there was a lot of stuff I've done. Sons of Solomon has been the thing that sort of started it for me.
Okay.
Because that was back when I started questioning everything I thought I knew. And I was driven to find a way to pray the Psalms and convince people to pray the Psalms, to read the Proverbs and convince people to read the Proverbs. But it was more than that too, because I went through this whole phase where I was like, since I have to question truth, 2020, right? They're lying to me. Everything I believed and listened to, all the authorities I trusted, I don't trust them now. And since I'm this kind of guy, I wasn't like, well, I just don't trust Fauci now. Right? Am I in trouble for saying that? I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that. I just don't trust some people now. For me, it was like an epistemology question, like to the very core, like what do I believe then? Like how do I know what I know? Are we real at all? I mean, that was the question. And what I knew I wasn't going to question was that Jesus is risen and that the Bible is true. And then I fell into kind of an old hunch, which is that we don't read the Proverbs enough. Why don't we read the Proverbs? Oh my goodness, why does no one read the Proverbs? We should read the Proverbs someday. I never did it. I just kind of always felt like, well, why don't we read the Proverbs? It's kind of weird. And I fell back into that. And then the Psalms were like accidental beside it. While I'm questioning everything, so I'm not just questioning like, are watching movies a good idea, right? Is democracy actually a functional way to run society? Or I'm not just questioning that. I'm like, how come clocks tell me what to do all the time? Is the clock healthy or good? Like, why don't I go to bed when the sun goes down? Because like I opened Genesis 2, right? It's like, and it gave the lights in the sky for marking times. And seasons and signs. And so it's like, oh, the moon is there because it's supposed to talk to me and tell me something. Well, that's weird. I've never even looked at the moon. I mean, whoa, that's really weird what that thing does. It doesn't even make sense. And like, But the sun made sense, right? Up and down. And it's like, and I'm working on trying to get better sleep. So, I have a circadian rhythm, blah, 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 blah. Long story short, so I go like 3 months, 4 months, you remember, without a clock. I'm like, clocks are bad. Clocks are from the devil. And I wasn't quite like that, but it's like, what if they are? Could I live without a clock? What would happen? How would I have a clock then without a clock? What if I prayed 4 times a day and spaced it out to create a clock out of the Word of God? Sons of Solomon prayers. So yes, at the heart of my renovation of my psychology on purpose over several years is praying the Sons of Solomon prayers with diligence, even when I don't want to, even when I say them too fast and don't pay attention to them, because they're the clock that stabilizes my algorithm, my narrative. Yes, whatever else has happened that's improved my battle with depression, that was the heartbeat underneath all of it, and is so stable. It's just so stable.
Yeah, it's kind of like a constant foundation that you can stand on, even when the waves of life are pushing against you. So, so initially, yes, it was a heartbeat, and now, I mean, initially it was a timekeeper, and now it's, now what
it still functions as a clock for
you?
me. Although this past week I've been really bad about the evening ones. They just kind of, I don't know what caused that. But I've been missing them for a couple days, which I don't like. Like I can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it.
But like, no, the thing about it is like whether I'm praying the mid-morning ones at 10 or at 2, it still serves at that as opposed to being like a chronological, orderly, measured by moment clock. It's like kind of like when you're running a race that you know where you've been. You've run this route before, and there's that marker. Oh, there's that marker. I know where I am. I know where I am in the day. Right. It serves as that no matter what the time actually is.
Right.
And that is still, it's just there to the point where I'm like, oh, I missed something yesterday. You know.
And if you are able to pray them throughout the day at the times designated, not necessarily clock times, but, midday, morning, midday, early evening, and then late evening, it's breaking through that more negative input that the world wants to give us all day long with the promises of Christ and that constant. So I've found it to be like chatting with an old friend, that rejuvenation that comes from having them break into your mundane task and say on the telephone, "Hey, how are you doing?" That is kind of how you're making all sorts of...
I'm just trying to get Sons of Solomon.net up on the site. I'm listening to you. What you're saying is really good. Don't kill it.
So that has been my experience. I was curious if it was something that you have experienced now that you've been doing it for a little longer than you had last year. I
think one of the things
couldn't have gotten through my childhood without the Psalter. So
that's amazing.
So for me, it has been a constant for a very long time.
That's really cool. It was so cool that I lost what I was going to say entirely. But that's a really amazing thing that a child would be woke, awakened to hunger in that way.